Thank you so very much. And before we begin, again like to extend a warm welcome to you, sir. Thank you so very much for your time, for your patience. In fact, we were scheduled to have this event in around the 12th or the 13th of January, and we requested him. He was here in Goa, and he had to leave, but somehow things didn't fall in place, and he was very kind to, stay back for all this time. So thank you so very much. Thank you so very much. And in case if you've not got your copy of Reporting India, let me tell you, you're missing a very, very interesting book. It is such an amazing book that I can really tell you, this also has to be there as a kind of, जिसे कहते हैं एक छोटी सी भेंट आपके बच्चों के लिए, for your future generations, because so much you will find it for yourself, and if children read it, they will never be able to find such a well assembled book on the facts and the figures of our country. So my first question to you, and that's a very, very obvious question. You are such a popular man, and you've been all around, you've covered so much. कभी भी आपको अपनी जान का खतरा नहीं लगता था?
You see, जान का खतरा तो सिर्फ it can only happen in case of war and riots. But if you are presenting something to the television, you can't present it without being there. And therefore, you got to be there. I remember long ago, in 1957, I was among the founders of Viz News, which is the world's largest television agency today, as Reuters Television, with as our partners. And the editor told me, Prem, a dead Prem Prakash will be of no use to us, which is very true. But at the same time, a living Prem Prakash sitting in Calcutta would not be able to cover what's going on in East Pakistan. So I had to take those risks, and all I can say is, consciously whatever steps I could take to protect myself, I did. Rest was up to the Lord above. That's it.
So why did you think of writing or assembling this book, Reporting India, and the tag Reporting India, the name of the book? मतलब ये एकदम अचानक से आपको लगा कि ये नाम रखा जाए, या आपके दिमाग में कुछ और दो तीन नाम थे जिसमें से आपको कुछ अच्छा ये नाम चुना आपने?
You see, my friends had been telling me for a long, long time that I should write this book because they knew that I have seen pre-independence India in my childhood, in my boyhood, I would say that consciously, and I had seen a bit of 1942 movement too. After all, my age is like that, and I started my career during Panditji's tenure, and I had been very close to practically all the prime ministers, barring one or two whom I didn't like. And but so I was very ill in February 2019. In May I was being operated in Bangalore, and I had all the time. And my son told me that, Papa, why don't you just dictate to me, and I'll type it for you. That's how this book was written, in short.
So you are one of the very, very few journalists, very few, who worked with all the 14 prime ministers. 14 baras, 14 saal. 14 is such a iconic number. How was the journey of working with these 14 prime ministers? Who's your favorite one? Let's not ask whom you did not like, but who was your favorite prime minister?
You see, it's a very difficult question to answer, because as a journalist, they were all my favorite. because even those whom I didn't like, they were my favorite because I had to work with them. I had to get my items out of them. I had to get my stories from them. There was no way that I could say that I don't like you. So that said, that apart, when I started my career, I was just 21. And I got accreditation to the Government of India. It was very simple those days. It's very tough nowadays. And which meant that I could go to the Prime Minister's house, which I did. And the staff there was very friendly. One, Mr. Yashpal Kapoor, you will read in the book, received me and said, "Aja bache, come along child." That's how he addressed me. And he said, "Wait till Panditji arrives." So Panditji arrived and he looked at me and said, "Oh, I have to report and write a story on him." So he looked at me and he said, "Iska dhyan rakho." He just told his staff, "Take care of him." And that was that. So for the next 3 months, I would go there, spend time in the house. I almost became a household person, till I could do some work. So that's the way I started with Panditji. But life has been interesting throughout, and they were all very friendly. They were all very nice.
Who was the most difficult taskmaster?
Difficult to koi bhi nahi hota, because they also need to get their point of view across. But somehow, I have no hesitation in saying, what VP Singh did was not right. Till today, I have a feeling that as Finance Minister of Rajiv Gandhi, he let him down. And because remember, any government in the world doesn't depend only on the finances that you see in the budget. They may talk against black money, but they also need black money. Any government in the world. I'm not talking of Indian government, maybe American government, maybe Russian government, they all need money which they don't have to account for to anybody. And he knew that certain money was kept aside for that, and he used it against Rajiv Gandhi, which was not done. Which was not done. Rajiv had taken so much, he was a very simple person, Rajiv Gandhi, he was a very simple person. He had taken so much trust in him. He had reputation of being a very clean man from UP and all the rest of it. But this is what he did. So there are many things like that which one has seen, and which is very sad, which is unfortunate. Because the countries have to do many things to get things going. Good.
So you were equally, as you were here popular in India, equally popular in Pakistan, I must tell you. From Benazir Bhutto to Nawaz Sharif to, everyone, kind of doted on you. And but my question is, of course, what we saw or what we see in black and white between India and Pakistan, is that really true?
You see, it's a different story altogether. Relationship with me is again a relationship between a politician and a journalist. Yes, I was very quite friendly with General Ayub, who was the first military president of Pakistan, and it was during his period that I traveled to places like Swat, which were barred to anybody for that matter, Khyber, all those areas. And as far as Benazir is concerned, she was in London for a long time. I was in London for a long time. And, we became friends. Similarly with Nawaz Sharif, but Nawaz Sharif is more of a politician than but she was a human being. It was very sad that she went back to Pakistan. And she knew when she was going back to Pakistan, she kept telling me, Prem Saab, I will be killed. So I did tell her, why are you going then? You shouldn't go. Because she had a retarded daughter, and I said, you got to look after Tasmeen. Why are you doing this? But she did it. And as we know, she was killed. See, Pakistani politics has, I don't know, see, partly Cold War, in which Americans wanted a country with them. Nobody till today knows who killed Liaquat Ali Khan, the first Prime Minister of Pakistan. And soon after, Pakistan became part of US military groupings. And of course, it became the frontline state to fight against Soviet Union too. So that's a different thing. And Pakistan today, last I went there some 6 years ago or 7 years ago, and I told my colleague Surinder, we can't come here again now. Because they had gone extremely fundamentalist, and we are seeing now that the terror groups that they encourage are now beginning to bite them inside. You have seen their economy where it is, and those groups are now biting them themselves. So that's the story of Pakistan.
So coming to China, so 1962, the Indo-China War, you were an integral part. You covered it so extensively. Nobody could ever do that, sir. So my question to you is that what's your assessment as to where did we go wrong? What did we do wrong?
This is where one unfortunate negative side of Panditji. He somehow believed that after World War II, the world had seen so much horror in World War II that the nations won't fight wars. Nations won't use war to settle political matters. And he had done so much for China, which again is a question mark whether he should have done or not, that he didn't expect Chinese to do what they did to him ultimately, i.e., and also neglect. Neglect in the sense because they didn't believe there would be war, Indian army was totally neglected. The first commander-in-chief of the Indian army was a British. Soon after independence, when he went to Prime Minister with papers that, sir, every government has to have a military policy, and I've got this. If you can look at it and let me know what the military policy of our government would be. Panditji turned around and threw the paper away and said, we believe in non-violence. We don't think we would ultimately need the army. I'm forgetting the name of the very senior Indian general of that time who has written a book saying, perhaps Kashmir saved the Indian army. If Pakistan had not attacked Kashmir or those people had not been sent and we needed the army to fight there, perhaps they would have totally undone with the army. First of all, we had reduced the army from a winning army of World War II. I mean, remember, this Indian army was the one which turned Rommel around. It was the 4th Indian Division which had pushed Rommel back. Rommel was Hitler's toughest general. They had pushed him back. Indian army. And because it was totally neglected, they had 303 rifles, no new weapons, no new clothes. I was very sad watching them when they were climbing the mountain. Not enough trucks to carry them up the mountain. Imagine having to climb 14,000 feet arriving from plains of Punjab in heat. to Assam and then climbing up to Sela. It's not easy. So by the time they climbed and reached there, while they were digging the trenches, the enemy had already almost come close. So it wasn't the valor of the army which was wrong, it was the neglect. That's what happened.
So for how many days you'd like to share that? How many days did you kind of, were a part of it? And,
I stayed on in Tezpur. When north bank of Brahmaputra was vacated by India, India expected Chinese to land paratroopers and capture north bank of Assam, come to the plains, which the Chinese didn't do, which means our intelligence was terrible. And myself and George Varghese, who was the assistant editor of Times of India at that time, we were the only two persons who stayed on in, two Indians who stayed on in Tezpur, not worried about what would happen and so on. And so we saw everything. And it was a very sad time. I don't want to ever see that kind of thing again. And I'm glad that the Indian Army is in pretty good shape at the moment.
So you raised the point of World War, and here I'd like to put in a thing that Europe also fought the World War. So do you think, like Europe, ever South Asia would be consolidated?
You see, South Asia is, we should be close countries, but as things stand between us and Pakistan, between us and Bangladesh, okay, present Prime Minister is very close to India, between us and Sri Lanka, and now the Chinese intervention within this area. It's not an easy thing. And I must say that the present government is handling China pretty well. And the army is in good shape, so it should be all right.
So what do you think about the India and Nepal?
This is a continuous relationship. And this proves that religion is not a uniting factor. Even though they call themselves a Hindu state, and there's a Hindu government or a Hindu Prime Minister in New Delhi, that doesn't unite them. Both, yeah.
So recently, on the YouTube, a very senior journalist, there was a small little film, not film actually, but there's small little analysis which he did, and he somehow said that there were many similarities between late Indira Gandhi ji and Mr. Narendra Modi, Honorable Prime Minister of India. So do you think they're similar in their policies or in their way of acting? Is there any kind of similarity between them? And if they're not similar, how are they different?
You see, both are action-oriented. Indira Gandhi was action-oriented. She wanted to take steps. Whatever she did, remember, we had a population of only 330 million at the time of independence. In 1965, 66, maybe we were close to 370 or 400, whatever. We couldn't feed our people. We couldn't provide milk for them.
A very, very good evening. A warm welcome to Honorable Chief Minister Ji, Dr. Pramod Sawant. Thank you so very much, sir, for your gracious presence. Thank you so very much. Yeah. No, we'll Yes, absolutely. We just were doing a little conversation, if you allow us, just for next 5 to 7 minutes. And then, yes, we'll release the book and we'll, request, yeah. So the last question... The question that I had asked Mr. Prem Prakash ji before Honorable CM arrived was, is there any similarity between late Srimati Indira Gandhi ji and our Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi ji? Because recently a senior media person, he did a little analysis and that's on YouTube. If they are not similar, how are they different?
You see, first of all, Narendra Modi doesn't come from a dynasty. Narendra Modi has risen to where he has risen by the sheer dint of his hard work in the public and otherwise. Indira Gandhi rose to the Prime Ministership, being part of the Nehru family. But she was intelligent, she was smart, she was very clever, she knew what she wanted. And as I said, I was also close to her. And as I was explaining to you that 1965, we were unable to feed even a population of 400 million people. And there was fear that Bihar would have the first famine in independent India. The drought was such. Among the few journalists who were called in by the government, I was there as to what should be done, because they expected the famine will come. The world was, particularly America, not assisting us in any manner because they were using it to force us to join Cold War with them, if you would. Not bothered about that millions could die. But somehow Indira Gandhi managed to arrange the food. And when I went there to Bihar myself, I spent a lot of time there. It was a terrible situation, sir. I've never seen ground so dry, burning sun, farmers using buckets of water to try and keep the soil cool. It can't remain cool. But we managed that. And thereafter, the steps she took to get the green revolution in India have paid to the extent that today we are able to feed 1.3 billion people and export food. Similarly, Modi ji's things in Gujarat. Now, where they go wrong is she had an attitude of dominance. I don't see, you've seen in my book about emergency, the darkest day for democracy.
Yes.
Now, yes, agreed. I also felt that time that opposition should let her appeal to the Supreme Court. Because opposition was demanding her resignation rather than let her go to the Supreme Court. And her people, particularly his strange lawyers like Siddharth Shankar Ray, who was Chief Minister of Bengal, advised her to impose emergency. And she imposed emergency. And immediately the power went into the hands of her son. And the kind of things that happened, I'm afraid, particularly with women, I wouldn't like to quote them here, other than the fact that at ANI, we had started the service, limited service weekly, and in the viewing theatre, one day a story arrived, and I was there because I used to clear it myself. I was afraid of the whole thing during that period, and I said, I was ashamed that this was going on in the country. And I said, stop it. Bury it. Is this what they are doing to the women in India? About family control. So those things happened, but they were perhaps not known to her. And then she got surrounded by, you see, again, sir, I think most of you will agree that feudal families have one trait. Feudal families always have yes men around them. People who will, what we call in Punjabi, chamche. They will have chamchas around them. And they believe in them. Now, obviously, these guys, she got herself surrounded by Punjabi. I've written in my book also, Punjabi Mafia, who wanted to control the temples of Punjab. Because these temples are big money. Whether Hindu temples or Sikh temples, Gurdwaras are very big money. Take, for example, the Darbar Sahib in Amritsar. Over 100,000 people eat there every day. And yet that Gurdwara provides money to all over the country. It receives so much money. So they wanted to control those Gurdwaras. And that's what led to, ultimately, I don't want to go into the length, the tragedy of being attacked on. You would never attack a temple. Don't do that. But the temple was attacked. Compared to that, Modi ji is not in that sense. He delivers things. If he believes that this has to be done, he'll make sure that people are around and they get it done. I've not seen him, for example, a lot of people are talking that today there's a lot of people means what we call in New Delhi Lutyens media, left-oriented media. But I have not seen emergency-like situation. It's not there. It's all rubbish. He has every right as a Prime Minister or as a politician. Is he going to meet so-and-so or not? He has every right. That's all about him.
So, we'd like to know your views on press censorship. You've included that also in your book. Can you take us back to that era?
You see, that was during the emergency. It was a very bad time. But, I mean, censorship always is bad, in any case. However, the worst part was where I suffered was not because of censorship. I was called by the Chief Censor Officer, Harry Dipana. Prem, we haven't met for a long time. Can we have lunch together? I've written all in the book. I went to see him and I said, Harry, let's come to the point. You've been here 3 months. We only had a cup of tea in your office. And today you have suddenly asked me for lunch. What is it about? He said, you have already come to the point. I want you to disappear. I said, but what have I done? We've been observing the rules. He said, yes, you have been very smart. Your people have been very smart in ANI and Viz News. All your stories are duly cleared by censor. We have no report against you. But it's the black-leg journalists who don't cover, who don't go about, who have been complaining against you. And the minister wants me to arrest you. And the minister was V.C. Shukla. This kind of thing was there in emergency. So I had no alternative. Both myself and my wife, we left within 24 hours. That was that. So censorship, these things are bad. But there is no censorship today. There is no emergency today. There is a self-control, yes. Because the nation has to learn. As I just pointed out to you vis-a-vis China, you know, in Kargil, one lady journalist lit a cigarette. that resulted in the death of several soldiers. Just lighting a cigarette, because when it is totally dark, the enemy can notice a light anywhere. So that's the thing.
So Goa is very close to your heart. In fact, you came here when I think many of the people sitting in the audience wasn't even born. You came in
1961 with the army.
Yes, you came in 1961 with the army. गोवा में क्या बदला और क्या वही है?
Goa is a changed place. More so during Panikar and Mr. Sawant's time. It's a totally changed place. It is now truly India's #1 tourist destination. And of course, my friend Ralph D'Souza is sitting here. When the idea of these two bridges came, I'm sure in normal course they would have built those straightforward bridges. But Ralph and I agreed, and Ralph carried on, that they should be signature bridges, so that the Goa gets an image. After San Francisco has its image from where? From its bridge. So Ralph did all the work, hard work here, and I spoke with Gadkari ji in Delhi, and he said, Prem, that's a very good idea. We should have the best bridges for both those rivers. And Parikar ji was there. There they are. Goa is a fantastic change place today. I mean, I came from South Goa to you in just 25 minutes. Yeah.
That calls for a huge round of applause. We're sitting right here.
Great work done by him and
Yes.
Ji.
On this junction, I'd request and invite the Honorable CM to kindly come up here on the stage. Thank you. A huge round of applause for the dynamic Chief Minister. For the book launch, may I request the SRs women of Goa, Vaishali, Gaurapriya, Shruti, the General Manager of Siddharth, to also come up here, and we can have the formal book launch.
So much for that book launch. And with that, Reporting India is now launched in Hindi. We have very, very warm welcome to our Chief Minister, Dr. Pramod Sawant ji. And I think we're going to continue with the conversation shortly.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'd like to ask the Honorable Chief Minister Sahab that would you have any question on, of course, we all know Mr. Prem Prakash ji's journey, but of course, we look up to you, you're a youth icon, and, many people follow you, and I am coming from Rajasthan, and जब भी कोई युवा सीएम की बात होती है हमारे देश में, तो आपका नाम सबसे पहले आता है. तो sir, any question as a youngster to the veteran journalist who's sitting next to you?
मैं सिर्फ एक ही पूछूंगा कि आपका what is your advice for the new politicians? You had seen the आपने प्री इंडिपेंडेंस से लेके अभी तक सभी प्राइम मिनिस्टर ने फ्रॉम द नेहरू जी से लेके मोदी जी तक आपने यू आर क्लोजली उनके साथ में काम किया है. तो जो नए पॉलिटिशियंस है लाइक मी, ओके, आपका एडवाइस क्या रहेगा?
देखिए, एक तो मैं अपने आप को नाअहल समझता हूं कि मैं किसी पॉलिटिशियन को एडवाइस दूं, वो भी एक चीफ मिनिस्टर को, because a chief minister has his own vision, and you are working, as I see, the changes in Goa to your vision. Those changes are coming about. Where we go wrong is the other politicians who become fixers. And I've seen far too many fixers. Far too many fixers. If you see, talking of Panditji, there is a positive side to him. There are some very serious negative sides to him. Positive sides were setting up of research institutes, setting up higher education, setting up ISRO, setting up nuclear research. All these things which have matured today, and one can be very proud to say, the research being done about the man landing on the moon, Indian landing on the moon, is being done by 2 lady scientists. The fantastic change from 1947 to today that I have seen among our women, education, total freedom, they're into every walk of life. And the change I've seen in Goa, I arrived in 61, I covered the surrender by the Portuguese, and I've been coming here regularly. I've always spent for the last 14, 15 years, I spent my winters in Goa, and I've seen the changes, and particularly in the last 4 or 5 years. You've done wonders, and please carry on.
Thank you. Thank you. My second question is from the print and electronic media. Now it comes to the social media. What is your advice for the reporters, for the young reporters?
देखिए, सोशल मीडिया और यंग रिपोर्टर्स में तो बहुत फर्क है. यंग रिपोर्टर्स को तो मैं ये कहूँगा, भाई प्लीज स्टडी. बगैर पढ़ाई के काम नहीं होता. प्लीज स्टडी हिस्ट्री, प्लीज स्टडी इकोनॉमिक्स. The problem today is that in my days there were no schools or colleges for so-called journalism. I don't know what do they teach at these journalist schools. They have asked me a few times to go and talk to them, but I don't understand, because basically a journalist has to report or write on certain subjects, and he must have knowledge of that. Many of the young journalists today, sir, do not read enough. In my own organization, we have to constantly tell them that, look, there's a library here in the organization. Pick up some book, whatever you want. No, they have no time. And I wonder why don't they have time? And as for social media, that's very dangerous. Dangerous in the sense, everyone has become a journalist. So there is so much of fake news and rubbish coming on that riots can take place. And things have happened in India because of that. And it is very unfortunate, and one doesn't know how to control it. Otherwise the government would have done it. It's not possible. Because if you control it, then you are hurting the freedom of expression of the individual. But that freedom of expression of the individual is untrained. The guy hears some gossip somewhere and puts it. How do you stop that? That's where my sympathy would lie with people like you, because you have to suffer that sometime. Yes.
I was always intrigued by one individual, Mr. Subhash Chandra Bose. I would really want to know your thoughts about him.
You see, the best that I can tell you on that, there was an interview with Attlee, the Prime Minister of Britain, who gave India the independence. And the question put to him was, could you not have dealt with the Congress and the independence movement there to continue the British rule? Attlee's reply, which is recorded, was simple and straightforward. Yes. Gandhi and Congress were no problem. Remember, if you study the Congress's history, it was really born as a club by that British Hume. Those were settled there, here in India. It grew into a public body only when Gandhiji arrived. But that was Attlee's reply as far as the Congress and the Indian freedom movement was concerned. But he pointed out, we have ruled India and the empire also, not just India, all these countries, with the strength of the Indian army. And the army recruited by Subhash Chandra Bose came from the Indian army. These are all POWs who opted to, there were some who didn't. It's not that all of them opted. There were some who refused, but they opted to, and he said, our report was, this has now gone all over in the thoughts of the Indian army that we are fighting for a foreign power. Then there was mutiny in Navy in Bombay. And Subhash Chandra Bose, if he had arrived in Imphal, if the flag had been raised there, the possibility is that there would have been rebellion all over India. So Subhash Chandra Bose's role in independence of India is very big in many ways. In many ways. If he had not been there, Attlee had made it very clear that they could have stayed down.
So, of course, we'll not make this conversation very lengthy, but just one or two things which I'd like to ask you. You're an expert on Afghanistan. जब से मैं बड़ी हुई अफगानिस्तान सिर्फ बॉम्ब और धमाके के अलावा मैं कोई और चीज से अफगानिस्तान को रिलेट नहीं कर पाई. So do you think the situation in Afghanistan is going to improve? What is actually the present status?
You see, Afghanistan is a very tragic story for me. I have known Afghanistan in very happy days. People from my organization had gone first time there in 57. I went there for the first time in 1975. You know, in Kabul, you could hardly see a lady in Afghan dress. They were educated, most of them in the city, and in Western dress. It was so well advanced in many ways. Same in Jalalabad, same in all other cities. It was moving ahead. It became victim of Cold War. Americans had a secret base in Peshawar, from where they used to fly over Soviet Union to see what the Soviets were doing down below. U-2 planes. A U-2 plane was later on shot down also. And that all led to this war, and they have really become victims. And now, because they could not win the wars of Sawant, they first declared, in order to incite them, Islam in danger. Afghans are not that kind of Islamists. They are very secular in many ways. There was such a large Hindu Sikh population there. And first they declared Islam in danger. When they declared Islam in danger, nothing happened. Then they introduced Mujahideen. Again, nothing happened. Many of those Mujahideen joined the Afghan army. Then Pakistan and USA created this Taliban, and they have destroyed the tribal structure of Afghanistan. And I do not know now, to be honest with you, having known Afghanistan, as to how this Taliban in Afghanistan would be got rid of. How would that country ever get back to normalcy? Because they're not normal at the moment. So it's a very tragic story. I have just finished a book on Afghanistan, which I hope to be released in February. I'll send you a copy, sir.
Yes, sure.
Sir, India, of course, we know is a developed nation, but still about 80 crore Indians, approximately, still depend upon the support of grains. So what do you think, when is all this, I mean, कब हम बोलेंगे कि ये ऐसा situation नहीं है और ये fully developed country है?
देखिए, in many ways we are fully developed. Certain population, where unlike China, now Chinese are finding that they have also gone wrong by controlling their population the way they did. Where we went wrong when we removed Jagirdari and Zimidari soon after independence and gave land to the tiller, we did not tell them that you cannot subdivide it. Some law should have been made where the senior most member of the family should have managed the land without dividing it, and whatever came of it could be shared by the brothers or the family. What has happened is the 300 million landless labor that you see in villages now, which is as big or bigger than it was at that time when the Zimidari and Jagirdari was there, is nothing else but those people who have become landless because they have sold their lands. If a family was given 7 acres of land by distributing the land they took from Zimidar or Jagirdar, that land got divided among 3 brothers, that land got divided among 6, finished. And that is what has created this. And today, at least in Punjab, I see strange new politicians. They are much bigger than the old Zimidars and Jagirdars. Village after village has been purchased by them from these farmers. That's why everybody wants to go to Canada from Punjab. It must be happening in other cities too, other states too, because this 300 billion is spread all over India. So that poor population, I do not know how we will be able to deal, because the education, so on. Maybe he can tell you, because Goa doesn't have that kind of problem as far as I can see, but he can tell you how to deal with that.
Goa is also going through the same problem now.
बताइए फिर.
इसके ऊपर न कमेंट किए तो सही है.
But that's unfortunate, isn't it? Some way has to be found where beyond a point, say whether you say 5 acres or you say 7 acres or you say 6 acres, beyond that you can't subdivide it.
Certainly, of course, all of us sitting here would agree with you. But yes, जैसे आपने बोला कुछ comment नहीं करा जाए तो ठीक है. But yes, sir, thank you so very much, sir. But last thing, sir, कुछ ऐसी चीज जो आप इस किताब में चाहते थे जो नहीं है, anything which you wanted to be a part of this book and which is not there, or any experience you'd like to share with us? Of course, that you cannot forget. There are many experiences. We spoke on China, we spoke on Afghanistan, we spoke on, the darkest hour of Indian democracy, but something which you cannot forget ever.
Hey, I have, whatever I've seen and covered, I've put that down. I have not hid anything back. And if it was critical, I've said critical. And let us see when I write further.
Superb. Can we just have 2 questions from the public, the audience, and just short and very, brief.
Deteriorating moral fabric of Indian journalism at this point of time, given the content that is written and discussed on national television. My second question to you is about the communal disharmony in this country. We grew up in a very secular environment, but at this point of time, I feel the country is extremely divided in terms of what information is available in the public domain, especially when it comes to the communal disparity in this country.
Your first question was about... Well, you see, that I just pointed out to you. We got all these schools of journalism today. And I don't know what they teach them there, but unless they teach them one simple, straightforward thing, that you have to honestly present what you have seen. Only thing you do is, you take that precaution which we were told by senior editors. See, I had the good fortune to work alongside or under editors like Frank Boris, Mulcaulker, Mankekar. So they used to say, take your own decision, but make sure that it doesn't lead to any disharmony. And one reported honestly on all that. Now, I don't know, in many cases I'm told money power has come into play. India is a highly industrialized country now in many ways. That money power comes into play. It's an individual's life, it's an individual's opinion, or the editor who controls them, who has to watch it. Now, as far as what you're saying about communal disharmony in the country today, personally, I don't see it. Communities have become very expressive. Communities have become very expressive. And I would say that to some extent, because the certain kind of secularism that was being practiced earlier only encouraged divide in another manner. Only encouraged divide in another manner in the sense that in many ways certain communities were suppressed. For example, Christians wouldn't get as much place as they should have been given for their education, for their thing, nor would Hindus. Special effort was made to find Muslim candidates. That was another way of bringing about communal divide, which remained suppressed. Now suddenly it's finding its expression, but it's up to us, you, me and others, to control the hot-headed elements, or for him, that these hot-headed elements do not indulge in violence, which they have indulged in some cities on the cow protection issue and so on. We don't realize that farmers in UP are unhappy about this cow protection. We don't realize farmers even in Rajasthan are unhappy about this cow protection. Because the farmers used to sell the cow once she became dry. They couldn't care what happened to her. whether he was a Hindu farmer or whoever. Now, those cows are wild. The farmer still is not going to feed her. And there is not enough with the government to feed all these cows. Those cows are wild into the eating into the crops and so on. So, a lot of new problems have arisen, but this communal divide is something that can be handled.
Thank you, sir. As sir had just joined us, we are very, very thankful, to you. And Prabha Foundation is soon going to start its activities here. Prabha Foundation is a not-for-profit based in Calcutta, and we work to promote art, culture, languages, and literature. We organize boutique literary events. We've been working in almost 50 cities across the globe. 2 months ago, we met in Goa, and this is the official start of our chapter in Goa with you, sir, and with Prem Prakash ji. We look forward to your support, continued support, because Prabha Foundation is an innovator of events to connect the dots of art, culture, language, and literature. On this junction, may I request the Honorable Chief Minister to please say a few words.
रिपोर्टिंग इंडिया श्री प्रेम प्रकाश जी के इस बुक का अनावरण करने का मुझे मौका मिला। सबसे पहले मैं भाग्यवान हूँ क्योंकि प्रेम प्रकाश जैसे पत्रकार ने सीनियर जर्नलिस्ट हु हैज एडवाइज सो मेनी पीपल और प्री इंडिपेंडेंस से लेके अभी तक जो अपने लेखनी से मुझे लगता है ही हैज रिपोर्टेड होल ऑफ द इंडिया व्हाट हैड हैपन फ्रॉम द प्री इंडिपेंडेंस से आज तक। और स्पेशली आई थिंक जो गोवा मुक्ति संग्राम 1961 एंड 1955 और ऑल्सो 1955 का सत्याग्रह इन शॉर्ट यस, इसलिए ही इज वेरी क्लोज टू द गोवा। और इस बुक का पब्लिकेशन, इस बुक का अनावरण आज इस अवसर पर गोवा में हो रहा है। मैं ज़्यादा बात नहीं करूंगा, लेकिन ये मेरा परम सौभाग्य है यहाँ पे आज इस बुक के इनॉग्रेशन में मुझे आना मिला और इस बुक का इनॉग्रेशन मेरे हस्ते हुआ है। सही में इससे आगे जो आपका ऑर्गेनाइज प्रभाकेतन फाउंडेशन ने ये अवसर मुझे दिया, इसलिए मैं इनका भी बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद करता हूं। और इससे आगे प्रभाकेतन फाउंडेशन की जो जो एक्टिविटीज गोवा में होंगे इनके लिए भी मैं शुभेच्छा देता हूं। गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से वट एवर द सपोर्ट रिक्वायर्ड इन फ्यूचर ऑल्सो वी आर देयर विथ यू टू डू द डिफरेंट एक्टिविटीज करने के लिए। और श्री प्रेम प्रकाश जी को मैं बहुत बहुत शुभेच्छा दूंगा। उनके नेक्स्ट कॉपी जो आ रही है अफगानिस्तान के ऊपर, वो कॉपी भी जो वो कॉपी भी मुझे मिलेगी। और एएनआई के लिए जो उनका कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशंस जो रहा है, मुझे लगता है इतना बड़ा कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशन किसी का नहीं रहा होगा रिपोर्टिंग में भी। और सही में उन्होंने जो एडवाइस पॉलिटिशियन के लिए और उन्होंने जो एडवाइस स्पेशली द रिपोर्टर्स के लिए दिया है, वो बहुत बड़ा एडवाइस है रिपोर्टर्स के लिए ज़्यादा करके, क्योंकि प्रिंट इलेक्ट्रॉनिक मीडिया से अभी एरा सोशल मीडिया का आया है। और अभी तो व्हाट्सएप यूनिवर्सिटी चल रही है, मुझे लगता है देयर इज एवरीथिंग इट इज गोइंग ऑन द व्हाट्सएप यूनिवर्सिटी। इसलिए सभी पत्रकारों ने जो यंग रिपोर्टर्स हैं उनके लिए आप लोगों की एडवाइस इससे भी हमेशा के लिए रहेगी। सो वंस अगेन रिपोर्टिंग इंडिया बुक्स के लिए बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं और ये बुक सभी के लिए मार्गदर्शक रहेगी, यही मैं इस अवसर पे कहूंगा। फिर एक बार आपके लिए बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं। थैंक यू वन एंड ऑल।
Thank you so much, Dr. Pramod Sawant ji. Thank you. We are actually really honored to have you here. We know that you have a very busy schedule, and yet you were able to make time for the Prabha Khaitan Foundation. It's really nice of you, and we're greatly indebted. And thank you for also encouraging us and telling us that in the future, because this is our first event and we've just launched the foundation today. And thank you for sharing with us that we'll have your continuous support. Let's give a huge round of applause to the Chief Minister. Tough times don't last, tough people do. I think that's what we all realized this evening when we heard Apraji asking incisive questions to Sir, Shri Prem Prakash ji, and the way he handled them and the way he told us about his life story and his life journey, should I say. Of course, it's all documented in his book and we shall all be reading a copy of it. But it really made me think that, it's great to have people like him around to share their experiences, to share their thoughts with us. So thank you once again very, very much for sharing your information with us. And it's been very encouraging for us to also have a delightful audience.
We will have the mementos followed by the national anthem.
Yeah. So we have amongst us Shri Ralph D'Souza, who is the chairman of the D'Souza Group, which is into real estate, and he's also the president of the Goa Chamber of Commerce and Industry. May I request Shri Ralph D'Souza and our Ehsas woman, Gaurpriya Paikane, to please offer the memento to our Chief Minister, Shri Dr. Pramod Sawant ji. We'd now like to offer the memento to Shri Prem Prakash ji. May I request everyone to please stand up for the national anthem.
जनमन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे.
If the only prayer that we ever said was thank you, that would be more than enough, said a famous author once.